Hello, welcome to a Smite video about Xing Mountain. This video is designed to be a collection of my thoughts and feelings on this game mode and what high-res could do to improve it towards the end of the video. So, without further ado, let's go on to the feedback and what I think is wrong with this game mode. So, let's start off with the subject of difficulty or the lack of it. Xing Mountain is not difficult, it's just unfairly difficult, if that makes sense. What Hyros have done is they've increased the average protection for pretty much every single boss, as well as their average health and damage output, which results in your damage output and your DPS per second being much lower. You have a very low health pool compared to them, and you do less damage. What this basically means is there's an artificial difficulty when it comes to the game as it stands. Everything you do does less damage and they do more damage. Many games follow down this design philosophy to increase difficulty, quote unquote, but it doesn't. Instead, it just makes the game incredibly unfair and, well, luck-based. Certain strategies become more viable compared to others because, quite frankly, there's not really much you can do. So the best you can hope for is to try and find cheat tactics in which you can just break the game, pretty much. Due to this artificial spike in difficulty, which is deeply unfair, certain items and gods are far more viable compared to others, because quite frankly they bring more to the team compared to everyone else. An example of this would be Anubis. Anubis has a slow on his hands, as well as having fantastic damage on that ability. Poseidon has a cripple or slow on his whirlpool, and is fantastic again. He has decent damage on that ability, the same with Anubis. As a result, these two mages are pretty much mandatory, as they have some of the highest DPS quickly and early on compared to every other mage. When it comes to items, you want to have percentage penetration in order to cut through the very high base protections most of these bosses have, as well as the very high health. On top of that as well, you need to have something that does a lot of damage to structures, which is why Crusher is pretty much mandatory on every single physical god in the entire game that you're going to play this game mode on. And it's also one of the reasons why Obsidian Shard is pretty much mandatory on every single magical based ability god in this game mode. It feels in many ways that Hi-Rez has created a game mode that was designed by an intern and they didn't properly test it, and instead they didn't understand why people like player versus player environment game modes, and then just increased the difficulty to such a level that it is deeply unfair and unreasonable. As a result, certain gods are well more viable compared to others. For example, Anubis and Poseidon both have a slow as well as a cripple in their kit, which does damage over time, which allows you to set up kills as well as keep enemies in place. Anubis has incredibly high damage on his ultimate, which makes him incredibly viable to burning down targets. Certain relics are better compared to others. For example, you can see here I'm using Sanctuary and Frenzy. The reason for these choices is pretty simple. Frenzy increases the damage output, and Sanctuary allows me to block damage. What you just saw there is just how unfair the game can be. Pretty much Zeus almost one-shotted me, and there's not really much you can really do. The game just spikes incredibly high when it comes to difficulty, and there's an example of it. In my opinion, I feel this game mode should have been, well, not released, and should have been tested a lot longer than it currently was. I think it's a interesting and fun concept, but I feel they should have, well, spent more time on it, if I'm honest with you. I would have liked to see a much more fleshed out version of this game mode instead of something that is rushed and clearly wasn't playtested properly, or even had a design process behind it. Instead it was, hey, let's just put random things into the game and see if it works or not. Anyway, there's not really much else I can really say. Play the game mode yourself and see what you think, but to me it's a complete and utter mess and should have not been released, and doesn't really have any design philosophy or follow any design rules at all compared to the base game, that is. which is a great shame. I was expecting them to take their time, but instead they seem to have rushed something out because, for whatever reason, they just did. I really do hope Hi-Rez does not do another game mode like this again, not without putting some serious thought and effort into it. What I mean by this is quite simple. Please, for the love of God, make a game mode that is difficult yet fun, as well as making it so that everything is viable in that mode, and making sure that the player doesn't feel unfairly cheated because they wanted a difficulty spike. What you have made, Hi-Rez, is not a difficult game mode. Instead, you've just made an incredibly frustrating game mode that is unfairly favoured to the computer compared to us, which is just downright annoying and frustrating and is not fun. You haven't done anything really interesting, and it just feels like a missed opportunity, if I'm honest with you. I really do hope that you go back to the drawing board if you're going to do any more player versus environment modes. Please make it so that all gods are, well, more viable, and that the difficulty does not scale off of the fact that they have insane health values as well as insane protections. Make it so that certain bosses have certain strategies or move sets, which they do, which makes the game mode difficult because you have to learn when they're going to do certain abilities and, well, dodge. Instead, all you've managed to do is create a very dumbed down version of player versus arena, an area mode, which is, well, quite clinicky boring and extremely dull. So, congratulations, I guess there. There are many ways which you could have done Xing Mountain. I would have done a more dungeon style approach in which you have to fight off waves of enemies, different ones, which you should have created something like Denton, or you could do just normal creeps, or you could do miniature small versions of the characters that then you fight later on. I would have then made it so that you could earn chests as well as gold and upgrade your items, and the items and powers scale exponentially based on how many dungeons you complete. But Hi-Rez didn't do that. I would have also made it as well so that the difficulty does not exponentially increase based on an artificial level because the enemies have insane levels of protection or health. No, I would have made it so that they have different strategies which makes them more difficult or easier. That's how I'd have done it, or how I'd have liked to have done it. One of the things I will say right now is I don't think Hi-Rez has done a good job on this game mode and rushed it. But there are lots of things they could do when it comes to this game mode as well as design wise, so that's just one idea right there. Okay, so that's all the Xing Mountain thoughts wrapped up, and that's all the Xing Mountain gameplay I currently have saved. Thank you for watching, like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you again next time.